Hello and welcome to another edition of Mailbag. What is Mailbag? Well, Mailbag is a feature of the channel where you guys leave lots of comments on the channel and I attempt to answer those comments, or if I can't answer those comments, I throw it out to you guys who have more knowledge on some of this stuff than I do. So let's get into the first mailbag of this session. Remember, like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Go over to Instagram and follow me there. Go over to Facebook, follow me there. That's where the normal notices are. And consider becoming a Patreon. Next question comes from Electro Colour Field. And this was in response to how good a copy is the Roland JX03 should I say, of the Roland JX3P. And this was a video I did in December 2023 when I had Gary's JX3P here. And Electro Colour Field writes, I agree with the frustrating mini jacks on the JX03 if you're using it in a studio. I find the USB audio out with an aggregate driver is the way forward. Gets that audio into the door perfectly, obviously not as a live tool, therefore not so useful. Well, first of all, thanks for your view on the JX03, and I agree, trying to make this unit work in a live situation I believe is a little bit challenging. And I think it's probably one of the reasons why the kind of MX1 concept really would work here, because if you could plug the damn thing in and via USB and use the USB driver, it makes things so much easier. Now, the way I kind of work with these units and how I've done it so far is to effectively have a 19-inch rack shelf with a foam insert and the unit to hold the unit steady and allow all the connections to remain in place when things are being moved around. But the issue I found with the USB connections on many of the Roland instruments is that the gain has to really be boosted. Now, I don't know whether anybody else has seen that, but definitely when I have these instruments plugged into my Mac, I'm really having to crank the gain up on the USB input to get it on par with an audio input that's coming in either through something like my Focusrite Scarlett or another audio input. So that's kind of me. But if other people are not experiencing that, then obviously please let me know. Anyway, Colourfield wrote back, yes, one of the first problems I had with the USB on the Boutiques was the amount of noise and interference coming through it. But I use USB isolators and it removed all that. Not such a problem when normalising the waveform. Having said that, I have an ACB version on the Roland Cloud, so I suppose I can avoid it completely. Worst case, it's a shame they didn't do a grown-up version of the Boutiques in the first place. Typical Roland. Well, this comes back really to what when Roland instigated the whole boutique piece, they didn't see the boutiques as anything more than a gimmick. And there is an interview with somebody from Roland, and I can't remember who it was and where I saw it, but there is in print an interview with somebody from Roland where they actually confirm that the boutiques were never seen as anything more than a gimmick when launched, and then Roland were completely taken aback about how quickly they gained popularity and sold out. And that was one of the other big issues. Is like the first 4 boutiques, and it was the JX03 was one of them. The JU08 was another one of them, and they both sold really well to the point where Roland actually ran out of stock and couldn't or wouldn't produce anymore. But yeah, you know, it's it's that problem. And then I went on to ask which USB isolators did he use, but he never responded on that one. So if you are using USB isolators on your boutique inputs, can you just drop a line to this one and say what USB isolators you're actually using? Because I just would generally be interested to understand how you're filtering out the noise, or are you doing it in your door? Next comment or question comes from Tuzis, and this was in response to Yamaha SY77 changing the battery, the third part of the restoration series I did in December 2023. And Tuzis writes, I've been restoring an SY99 over the past few days, so just in case someone else runs into this issue and wants a different solution. So instead of where I did, and I said at the time when I was doing the video, I said I don't recommend drilling holes in a circuit board or a synthesizer, but in this case I did. But what Tusi says is instead of drilling a hole, I soldered a wire to one of the terminals to make it longer and then reshaped it as I needed. Probably a bit more fragile in theory, but in practice feels fairly sturdy enough so that even in the future, me or someone else after another 30 years now tries to change the battery without being careful. I'm pretty sure it will be absolutely fine. The upside is that the battery looks as if the battery holder was part of the original design, and most importantly there was no drilling involved. But I like your solution too. I hadn't thought about it myself, and thanks for sharing. Now with all these things, when you do maintenance on the synthesizer, there are quite often many ways to skin a cat, as we say in the UK, which means basically you can do things in many ways to achieve the same output. But your solution is equally valid. The only issue I have about running a wire across the tracks is if you note it on a circuit board, quite often when you look at a circuit board, the circuit board is covered in, or the tracks seem like they're green or brown or slightly, and that's because normally what they do is they put, and I don't know what it's called, I can't think off the top of my head what it's called, but it's like a lacquer, and it's a non-conductive material. And the whole idea of that non-conductive material is that if anything falls on the circuit board, it doesn't short circuit the circuits. That's the general idea. And quite often when you have to bridge where you've got a crack in a circuit, a crack in a trace, what you have to do is you have to scrape back this protective layer so that you can then solder a wire on to bridge the gap. So that is kind of what you're looking at. Now when you do what's been suggested here, and I can't remember looking at the circuit, I'm not looking at the circuit board, it's a while since I did the mod, is what you have to look at is if you extend a leg and you push that leg across the circuit board, is it going to be in contact with any other traces? And effectively you could short circuit and put positive 3 volts onto a trace that's not expecting positive 3 volts and do more damage than the problem you're solving. In this instance, I'm not sure that would have made much difference because that whole area was effectively a area for the battery and would have held 3 volts across it anyway. So I don't think it would have made much difference, but you need to be careful when doing that sort of thing in the future. In which case, if you're going to do that, what I probably would suggest is putting a little bit of heat shrink across the leg just to insulate it, give it an additional piece of insulation. Anyway, thanks for jumping in, Tusis, and thanks for sharing your solution because it is different to my solution.